Hey everyone, Happy New Year. Welcome to Ridge Church Online. Glad you're joining us again. The sermon's going to start in like 20 seconds. Just a couple things I want to let you know. First of all, I want to remind you that we have a number of classes coming up that if you're here in the building, that you could join, register online. One of them being the marriage course, the Alpha Marriage course. We're just really encouraging couples, whether you've been married 6 months or 60 years, come on out and work on your marriage and enjoy the time together. It'd be really rich. You can find out more on the website. Then also, secondly, for those with young children, we have Family Night Out. It's coming up on January 26th, but it fills up. So take a bit of time, register your kids to come on out and spend the evening here at the church. It's a Friday night, chance for you to go out and have a date night. You're going to love it. And then not this week, but next week, our community groups are going to start. And if you're not already in a community group, you should get in a group. It's part of what we do. We just believe strongly in the value of being in community with a few others. So if you're not in a group at this point, then send a note again through the website and ask, and we'd be glad to help you find a place where you can connect. And January is a perfect time to get connected in. All right, nice to have you here. Here's our sermon for this week. Well, Happy New Year. Glad to have you back with us as we begin this new year. When I was in my early 20s, I spent a year at Bible college. In fact, I went to Bible college in England, a place called Cape and Ray, and it was like one of the best years of my life. I met some amazing people from around the world. I had a chance to just explore the faith, make it my own. I'd grown up in the church, and it was a chance to be like, oh no, this is my own faith. This is what I believe. And I had these incredible adventures. I mean, I went traveling in Scotland. I went skiing in the Swiss Alps. I backpacked through Israel. Like, if you're someone who's graduating from high school or just looking for a gap year, you could do a lot worse than taking a year to go to Bible school and have this incredible adventure. And for me, it certainly was the case. When I was in England, where I went to Bible school, I was a student. I walked most places. Occasionally, I took the train. And every once in a while, I would get a ride in a car. But the problem with that ride was it was kind of disconcerting for me because, I mean, the school was sort of out in the back country a little bit, and the drivers would whip down these narrow lanes with these sharp corners, and they had these high stone fences, so you couldn't see what was around the corner. But even more disconcerting was this: they drove on the wrong side of the road. In fact, the whole country drives on the wrong side of the road. And for someone like me who drives on the right side of the road, I mean, it was a little weird. It made me nervous. I mean, you get in the car and the steering wheel is on the wrong side. And when you come to make a corner, you know, the way we do right turns is how they do left turns. And the way they do left turns is the way we do right turns. And I spent a lot of time kind of being like, oh boy. But you know what I found is that in the end, we always ended up where we were going. And that's kind of what it's going to feel like for us as we launch into the book of Ecclesiastes. It's just a little book. It's buried right in the very middle of the Old Testament. In fact, if you're looking for it, if you find the book of Psalms, which is a very large book in the Old Testament, and then turn past that, past Proverbs, right after Proverbs is this tiny little book called Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes is only 12 chapters long, but it is very different than pretty much every other book in the entire Bible. It has a very different approach to thinking about life and a very different approach to thinking about God. And so when we read it, when we study it, sometimes it can feel a little disconcerting. I mean, if you're familiar with the Bible, it feels a little weird. It can make you feel a little nervous. But just like the roads in England, in the end, it gets you to the place that you're going. And along the way, the ride is both a little unexpected, but also incredibly interesting. You're going to see things that you never saw before. You're going to experience life and see it a little different light than you did before. And in the end, when we get to the end, I think you're going to say, wow, that was really, really good. So let's start at the beginning. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Here's how the book of Ecclesiastes begins. The words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem. He says, these are the words of the teacher. Now, the Hebrew word that he uses there is the Hebrew word koheleth. And in Greek, it's the word Ecclesiastes. And it literally means an official who gathers an assembly of people together to tell them something really important. So that's what the book of Ecclesiastes is about. It's about this teacher who gathers the people together to tell them something very important about life. But this isn't just any teacher. He identifies himself as son of David, king in Jerusalem, which means that this teacher is none other than Solomon, the son of David, one of the wisest, most powerful, most wealthy kings in all of Israel. And so he gathers everyone together. He says, hey, everyone, come together. I want to tell you something really, really important. And this is what he says. Verse 2, meaningless. Meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Now, that's not exactly what you would be expecting from something like this. Clearly, we are already driving on the other side of the road. The teacher says everything, all of it is utterly meaningless. Now, that word again in Hebrew is actually the word havel or hevel. And in the version that we're using, it's translated as, the NIV, it's translated as meaningless. But other English versions have translated it in other ways. Sometimes vanity, right? Vanity, vanity, everything is vanity. Another version translates it as pointless. It's all pointless or futile. But the Hebrew word, hevel, actually it literally means it's smoke or vapor. Everything is smoke and vapor. That's the image. Now think about that, right? Smoke. Smoke is something that you can see, but then it kind of disappears, doesn't it? And you can see it so that you reach out to grab it, but if you've ever tried to grab smoke when you open your hand, it's gone. See, hevel is that which is passing or temporary. That which is temporary, by definition, is insubstantial. It will not last. So, for instance, the sunrise is beautiful, but it is hevel. It is passing. If you try to hang on to it, you will inevitably lose it. But hevel has a sort of a deeper meaning yet. And it's this idea that everything is a bit of an enigma, a mystery, a paradox. You know, I saw a rich man who had it all, and then he was gone. Hevel. I saw a righteous man who followed God fully, and yet all these bad things happened to him. Hevel. Good people get what the wicked people deserve. Wicked people get what good people deserve. You think that you kind of figure life out how it ought to be. It ought to be that good people get good things and bad people get bad things. And sometimes it's true, but sometimes it isn't. And it's this paradox. It's this enigma. It is hevel. It is meaningless. Solomon says it's all hevel. It's all smoke and vapor, an enigma, a paradox. It doesn't last, and it doesn't always make sense. And then he says, in light of that, here's the question that he wants to ask. And it's a question that we only ever ask fleetingly, but it's an important question. Here's what he asks in verse 3. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Here's this question, why? Why is it that people work so hard at these things that they consider so important, so valuable, their career, their family, the wealth that they want to accumulate? I mean, what is it that they're really ultimately getting out of it? What is the gain? Now, when he says gain, that Hebrew word is a business word. It's an accounting word. He says, look, if you were to put all of it on a ledger, the time, the effort, the labor, the toil, the heartache, the drama that it all takes. If you put it all on a ledger and look at it from a very cold, clear, calculated view, what is it that you expect that you're getting? You might say, well, I mean, to live a good life, to make the world a better place. And someone's going to say, okay, but Do you really think that's what you're getting? Do you really think that that's what is going to happen? Is that really a realistic expectation? And as we're going to see, he's going to suggest that it's not necessarily the case. And he's going to be pretty cold and calculated about it. I mean, there is nothing trite or pretentious or sentimental or dishonest that Solomon is going to say. So Solomon says, okay, let's talk. And he begins to press this assertion that everything is hevel, that it's all just smoke and vapor. And he's going to do it first by pointing to the world, the natural world, and then pointing to human experience. So here's what he says in verse 4-7. He says this: generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. Solomon says, look at nature. It is relentlessly repetitive and yet utterly unchanging. The sun rises, the sun sets. The wind blows here, the wind blows there. The streams run into the rivers, and the rivers flow into the oceans. It's happened for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and yet the sea is never full, and the streams never stop running. It just repeats itself over and over and over and over again, which therefore makes it incredibly ordinary. I mean, these things become the kind of background noise into our lives, in our lives. They continue simply because of the caring providence of God. They're this reminder that things are going according to plan, but not our plan. I mean, you cannot change any of those things. Rather, according to God's plan. But they just keep rolling on relentlessly over the millennia. So, that brings us back to Solomon's question then. If it's happened this way for thousands and thousands of years, what's the gain in it for you? So what? The sun rises, the sun sets. The same sun that shone on you today or yesterday is the same sun that shone on the guy who first laid the very first stone of the pyramid thousands and thousands of years ago. Generations come, generations go. And the wind still blows and the rivers just keep flowing. And he says the same thing is true of human experience. Here's what he says in verses 8-10. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear is full of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. Solomon says, look, all of human life is the same way. People are born, people die. People build homes and businesses. People sell their homes and businesses shut down. What has been will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Now, of course, he's not talking about new technology. People say, oh, yeah, but look at all the new technology. It's not what he's talking about. Technology, of course, continues to change and grow, but it's only a different way to deliver to us the exact same thing over and over, right? I mean, take Netflix, for example. Brand new, relatively speaking. New if you're my age, right? Netflix means that you don't have to go to the video store anymore. You can literally stream into your home movies. But you know what Netflix delivers to you? It delivers to you stories, right? That's what you're getting. You're getting stories. Now, before Netflix, you had to go to the video store and look through all the videos and pick one and bring it home. But before that, if you wanted to have a story, you had to go to your TV set, turn it on at exactly the right time, and watch the story on TV interrupted 10 times by commercials. But before that, if you wanted to hear a story, you had to go and gather around the radio and listen to the story. You couldn't watch it. And before that, there was these things called books that you get out of a place called the library. And that's where you could go to get your stories. But before that, You would sit around and listen to the elders in your village or in your tribe, and they would tell you the stories. All stories. Just different ways of delivering those same stories. And the stories are really the same ones over and over, right? Right? I mean, think about it. Netflix drops 3, 10, 15 new movies every week. Every week. Brand new. And what do you do when you sit down to watch Netflix? No. Seen it. Dumb. Don't want to watch it. 30 minutes. Why? Why? Because you know the story. You've seen the story. It's just a different actor and different actress in a different setting. That's why I tell my wife every time she says, let's watch a rom-com. I'm like, a rom-com? I wonder what's going to happen. I mean, we know what's going to happen, right? And then I always remind her, but, honey, action movies are totally unpredictable. You never know how they're going to end. We should watch one of those, right? I mean, it's the same thing over and over. So if that's the case, why don't you just watch your favorite movie every time? Oh, it's Tuesday night, same movie over and over again. I mean, since the 80s or the 90s or since the 2000s, you just watch it over and over. Because you don't want to, right? You want something new. And yet it's all the same. Solomon says it's wearisome. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. It's the nature of human life. You go to work, you come home, you go to bed, so you can go to work again. You clean up the house, you turn around 10 minutes later, you say, what, did I not do anything here? You clean the house again. You build a business and raise a family, and then your kids move out and your business shrinks. Nothing really changes. You know, in the late 1800s, they thought there was going to be a big change. In the late 1800s, the theological liberals said, look, we are coming to a golden age. We're coming to a place where humanity is finally going to turn the corner and we're going to become this sort of new super species of people that live in this utopian world. And they said, look, we've abolished slavery. Look, the Industrial Revolution has raised the lives of millions of people to middle class. Look, the temperance movement is bringing an end to alcoholism in our country. We are on the dawn of a new age. And then World War I happened. Utterly meaningless and incredibly brutal. But they said, yes, but it is the war to end all wars. And the rest of the 20th century, with World War II and the Cold War and all that went with it, became the bloodiest century in human history. This idea that it was going to be the golden age was wiped out. And today, in our culture, there is again a rising sense among the cultural elites that if only we have enough education, if only we can get everyone to think the same things about these ideas and these topics, if only everyone, goes with this thing, that we can enter some kind of utopian cultural existence. Different issues, different mindset, all different, but all the same. What seems so big and so important and so revolutionary for us in this moment turns out, against the backdrop of the endless rising and setting of the sun, to be not so important after all. I mean, Benjamin Shaw tells about a time when he worked at Princeton University in the library in the 1980s. And one of their jobs was to go and to call some of the old books in the library. And he found a book there called Lex Mosaici. It was one of the standard textbooks of the day. It was widely regarded by the best scholars of the day, widely read. And he flipped open to that page where they would stamp, do by. And the last stamp in that book was from 1895. In other words, it had been almost 100 years since anyone had even bothered to crack open this important book. It's all just the same thing, over and over. And then Solomon makes it really personal. Here's what he says next, verse 11. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. You think your life is so important, so significant, says Solomon? You think that you are going to leave something that is incredibly lasting in meaning? Solomon says, don't kid yourself. You know, if you go to Fort Langley to get a coffee or just to go shopping there, you know there's a beautiful cemetery right there. I don't know if you've even noticed it, but if you walk by, it's this gorgeous cemetery. And the question is, have you ever walked in there? Have you ever taken the time to say, you know what, I'm going to take 10 minutes out of my day and just look through here? And if you have you ever bothered to read the names on the headstones? Because those people, whoever they were, those people were important business leaders in their day. They were gifted tradespeople, widely regarded in their circles. They were mothers who raised brilliant and successful families. They served in their community and served in their churches. And now, today, no one knows who they are, and no one cares. You think it's going to be different for you? Let me ask you this. Do you even know the name of your great-grandparents? And if you do know their names, can you tell me more than just a sentence about their entirety of their life, all 40, 60, 80 years that they lived? I'll bet most of us can't. The fact is, this is what Solomon is pointing out, most people will make no apparent impact on the world. They will live and die and immediately be forgotten by the vast majority of people except for their closest friends and relatives. Happy New Year. That's just not really the kind of news that we're looking for, is it? If you're looking for an excuse to drop your New Year's resolution, you can say, it's all meaningless. It's hevel. Hardly uplifting, hardly motivational, but like I said, Solomon is anything but trite and pretentious and sentimental and dishonest. He is going to look at the ledger sheet and tell you the hard, cold facts. Now, why? Why is he doing this to us? Why would he gather everyone and say, hey, I want to tell you this? Well, throughout this book, there's another phrase that comes up over and over. It's this phrase, under the sun. He says this, what do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Another place, there's nothing new under the sun. And another, I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What does he mean by this expression, under the sun? What he means by it is life from ground level. He means all of life that we can touch and taste and smell and feel and experience. In other words, he means life apart from God. See, what Solomon is going to do in this book is deconstruct a secular view of life. You understand what we mean when we talk about deconstructing? It's a popular thing, unfortunately, in some of the church world these days. There are people who are deconstructing their faith. In other words, they're taking their faith and they're analyzing it and they're breaking it down and they're putting pressure on it. And unfortunately for some, because they haven't built their faith very strong, it's collapsing under the pressure of that deconstruction. And Solomon says, this is what I'm going to do about life apart from God. I'm going to pull it apart. I'm going to analyze it. I'm going to put pressure on it and see if it actually can withstand the pressure of a careful examination. He's going to deconstruct a secular lifestyle. But what Solomon is going to do is not just put pressure on the lives of those who have a secular view of life. He's also going to push hard against those who have a belief in God that is not truly biblical. He's going to push hard against what is known within the Christian world, or is often experienced within the Christian world, especially in North America, as the myth of religious fulfillment. It's very common in our part of the world. And the myth goes like this. I have accepted God into my life. I have let God into my life. So good of me, because I expect that him in my life is going to make my life easier and happier, and he's going to allow me and help me to have the kind of life that I always wanted to have. It's the myth of religious fulfillment. And it flirts with all of us from time to time. And it sounds like this. I've been praying and my prayers have not been answered. And I have been living for God, and things have not been going the way that they ought to be going. And I'm experiencing some real hardship in my life. And I don't understand that because I have God in my life. I mean, if he's a good God, if he's actually there, if he has any real power, this should not be happening in my life. And people begin to doubt, and they ditch their faith because of their expectations about who God is and what God is going to do. And Solomon, in this book, is going to lead us to a different conclusion. He's going to suggest that the problem isn't actually God. The problem is your expectations. The problem is in the myth that you and I sometimes have internalized, that somehow we're the center of the universe. Even though we're only part of these generations that have come and gone and that will be again, that right now we are the very center of the universe, and therefore God in his infinite wisdom and because of who he is ought to do what we want for us in our life. And in the coming chapters, Solomon is going to push pretty hard against that. And it's going to feel a little uncomfortable. But there's a reason for it. There's a method to his madness. You see, what Solomon is going to do is demolish in order to build up. He's going to push hard to tear down our false understandings of this life. He's going to show that our world, the universe that is the center of our experiences, is actually temporary and fleeting. To try to hang on to it is like trying to hold smoke in your hands. It will disappoint you and it will frustrate you, and it is futile and it is meaningless. And he's going to continue to ask the kind of questions that force us to stop pretending that what is smoke and vapor is enough for us. And instead, he is slowly but surely going to point us to the eternity that God has put in our hearts. Now, how is he going to do that? Well, that's what he tells us in this last portion of chapter 1. Here's what he says in verse 12. I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. Solomon says this, look, there is no one better than I, he says, to explore fully this life under the sun. I mean, he is the king, but not just any king. He is a man who has unlimited wealth, incredible wisdom, untold access to women, all kinds of power, all the resources that you could possibly want. He is the perfect person to try a grand experiment. And this experiment is that he's going to try all of life under the sun. He's going to take it all to the fullest extent that it can to see what it's like if you could have everything that you dreamed about, everything that you wanted. He says he's going to do it two directions. First, he's going to explore it in the direction of wisdom. By that, he means in the way that is right, in the way that was conventional and commonly understood. This is the way to get the most out of life. He's going to take that to the fullest extent and to find out what it's like if you do it the right way. And then he says, but I'm also going to explore madness and folly. In other words, he's going to try the other direction too. He's going to be the rebel. He's going to do it the wrong way, the way that everyone says, oh, that's a dumb way. He's going to say, yeah, but I'm going to find out if this is the way that can be done and find out what it's like. And then he's going to come back. And he's going to tell us what he learned. Pastor and author Tim Keller talks about an article that he once read. I think it was in the New Yorker or the Atlantic by a lady who lived in New York. He lived in New York. She lived in New York. And she wrote this article. She said, I would go to these restaurants and I would meet the nicest servers, the hostesses and the waiters and the waitress. They were so nice. And we get in these conversations. I said, well, what are you doing? Where are you going? And they'd be like, my dream is to make it big in Hollywood. A lot of them, that was what they were doing. They were serving because it allowed them the flexibility to do these different, gigs to get into Hollywood. And she said every once in a while they would disappear, sometimes for a couple of years. And then she said she would run into them later on. And when she did, some of them had gone from being the nicest, most reasonable people to being incredibly unreasonable and difficult and sometimes downright mean. In fact, she saw this pattern over and over. She began to ask herself, what's going on? Such nice people. And then suddenly so difficult, so hard. And she began to ask them, what's happened in this last couple of years? And they would explain to her that they'd made it. They'd made it in the movie industry. Some had gone to Hollywood, some had made it, in New York, and they had become what they had dreamed. When so many of their other colleagues in the wait staff in the restaurant industry hadn't. And she said, well, how could this be? These people who were so nice finally got to where they were going. And now they're mean and unruly and difficult and demanding. And what she observed, what she wrote in the article was that it appeared that they had finally reached the goal, the dream that they always wanted, and found that it was empty. Found that in the end, when they actually made it as far as they wanted to go, that it didn't fulfill the thing inside them. If she had used the words of Solomon in Ecclesiastes, she'd say they found it hevel. They finally got close enough to reach out and to grab the smoke. When they opened their hand, there was nothing there. And as a result, they became bitter and mean and unhappy. And it was a fascinating insight from someone who had no connection to the Bible or anything that Solomon is teaching here. You see, most of us will never achieve sort of the dreams that we have in our minds. It's not necessarily Hollywood or the big screen for sure, but we're chasing these dreams. If only I could fill in the blank. If only we had this, or if only I had that job, or if only I had this, if only then I would be happy and content and fulfilled. But we're always chasing that dream because it's not easy to get, because we have day jobs and mortgages and families and all sorts of other responsibilities. And so we spend our whole life kind of chasing after something that we can't quite reach. And Solomon says, actually, I got the time. I got the resources. No one's going to stand in my way because I'm the king. I'm going to do what you can't do. I'm going to find out for you. And he tries it all. Pick your poison. Money, fame, power, pleasure, you name it. He tries it all. And then he thinks about it and he analyzes it and he writes it down. And so that's why he begins the book by saying, hey, I'm the teacher. Kohaleth. The Ecclesiastes. Like gather around because I have something very important to tell you about life. If you're willing to hear it. I've been where you want to go, and I can tell you what it's like. But you got to be willing to listen to me. He's a little like a parent who sees their kid making a choice that they know will end up in pain for them, but the kid can't see it. And the parent can because they've already been there. They've lived that part of life. And so they say to their son or their daughter, please hear me out. I got to tell you, here's the pitfalls, here's the heartache that comes from this kind of a decision. But in the end, their kid has to decide whether they're going to believe what their parents say and listen or figure it out on their own. And that's what Solomon is saying here. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a vapor, a chasing after the wind. Over the next number of weeks, we're going to follow Solomon's grand experiment as he unfolds it for us. And you're going to have to decide if you believe him or not. Because if not, you're going to have to find out for yourself. If not, you could spend your whole life chasing after the wind, trying to grasp smoke in your hands, and you will end up saying, I can't believe this. Where is God? How come God isn't doing what I expect him to do? I don't trust him anymore. Or you can get to the end of your life and look back and wonder if there was really any gain for all of the trouble and all of the toil and all of the labor done under the sun. And you will end up coming to the same conclusion that Solomon starts out with, that it's all meaningless. It's all smoke. It's all vapor. It's all a chasing after the wind. It's very depressing. But fortunately, in the end, Solomon isn't going to leave us here. I mean, Solomon, he's going to take us deep down this hole because he wants us to actually understand, if you pursue that dream all the way, what it's like. And it will be a little bit depressing at times. But in the end, he wants us to see what it is so that in the end, we understand how good the good news is. And in the end, when we get there, he is going to show us in a way that you would not expect that in the end, because of God, everything has meaning. All of it. And this is the message of the gospel, isn't it? Jesus came into this world, into your life, into mine, into a life that is repetitive and ordinary and sometimes frustrating and with the questions and the paradoxes and the enigmas and the things we say, I don't understand why life is this way. He came into this world, not in order to make us successful, not in order to fulfill all our dreams and our wishes so that we can live just the way we want, but to save us from the fallenness of this world, to save us from the fallenness of our own selves, and to bring us into a world that is not, in which nothing is ordinary and where everything is in fact new. That's the good news of the gospel. And in the end, that's where Ecclesiastes is going to lead us. It's going to be an incredible journey. I encourage you, join us as we walk through what Ecclesiastes has to say. Would you bow your heads with me? Let's pray. Well, God, as we strike out on this new year, as we kind of begin 2024, it's fascinating to begin the year diving into the book of Ecclesiastes, because it's a very sober look at what life is about. It's in some ways a bit of a what's the word? Just a sobering thought. And yet, God, even in the midst of it, we see that you want to speak to us. God, that you want to help us see more clearly what this life is about. Help us understand better what our world is about. And in the midst of it, God, to see you at work, to know that you are behind the scenes, that you're in the midst of it all. God, that you have plans and purposes. But Father, may we not fall for the illusions of this world. May we not spend our lives chasing after that which is smoke and vapor. But instead, God, may we see what is really worthwhile, what you really call us to. So as we start on this, God, would you lead us as we follow after you in these next weeks? We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. It is a joy to start out the year worshiping together, listening to God's word together. So glad that you joined us again. Let me send you out with these words of blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord turn his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance and give you his precious peace. In the name of God the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you. Have a great Sunday. See you next week. Well, hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm the lead pastor here at Ridge Church. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that it was just a great opportunity for you to connect and learn more about following God and knowing Jesus. And we just want to invite you to continue to engage with us here. But we also believe that one of the best ways to follow Jesus is in the context of community. And so let me just take a quick moment and tell you what Ridge Church is all about. We're really about three things. The first thing is about Jesus. Above all, Jesus is the reason that we exist. Our goal, our desire is that you would know Jesus and be known by Jesus, and that he would change and transform your life. The second, we believe that community is really important. You know, in a world with so many digital connections and so few genuine connections, we believe that one of the best ways to live life, one of the most healthy ways, and certainly one of the ways to follow Jesus best is in the context of community. And so regardless of what stage of life you're in or where you're at in your spiritual journey, we want to invite you to come and to join us and to walk with a few others, to be known by them and to know them as we follow Jesus together. And then thirdly, we're about city. And by that we mean that we want to be a place and a people who love our city, who love our neighbors and serve them and care for them and just walk alongside of them so that our city flourishes. And we want to be known by our city as a group of people, as a church that offers hope and life and care and love to anyone who is looking for that kind of thing. So that's really what we're all about: Jesus, community, and city. And we'd love to have you join us. If you want to know more, just fire off an email to hello@ridgechurch.ca and someone will get back to you. Or better yet, just come by for a service, 10:30 Sunday mornings. We look forward to seeing you soon.